Rick, if you can tell the people who you are.
My name's Rick, and I love billboards.
And you're pretty new to this, right? This is your first year of doing out-of-home?
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. All of a sudden you find yourself saying, well, I've been at this 40 years, which fascinatingly, you know, we talk about turnaround times and speed to market with digital out-of-home. When I first started selling hand-painted bulletins, artwork lead time was 90 days before the start date. Can you imagine that? And the start date was month of, meaning we guaranteed you that it would go up sometime during the month of July. So the world has changed.
Yeah.
But some of the fundamentals are still in place, which is what we're going to talk about.
And your own agency standards are a little different now, right? Like you're a little more
specific. Now it's never fast enough, right? It's never fast enough. And I'm the one who drives everybody nuts because I'm like, now. Classic CEO behavior, right?
So where I want to start is with the kind of broader industry question. And I'm really excited to talk to you because I think there is this kind of question looming over our heads, and we're not necessarily going to reach an answer on it, but I hope we can get a little bit closer today. When we first talked about a month ago, you told me that digital out-of-home is like this Ferrari sitting in the parking lot or sitting in the garage, and it's just idling. What did you mean by that? Talk to me a little bit about like what your frame of mind is with it.
Well, you know, I look at it and look, the greatest thing that's happened to out-of-home media in the last 10, 15 years is all the CapEx investment in digital hardware, right? That's created so much opportunity, and the list goes on, and we've seen the manifestation of it in so many different ways. But if you stand back and you look at it very pragmatically, there's some things that are troubling. For example, we've effectively doubled the supply of out-of-home inventory in that period of time. You've taken the out-of-home footprint, and 20% of it or so is converted to digital, which has 8 or 10 spots versus 1. So that's doubled supply. But in that time frame, our share is flat. In that time frame, we've gone from an $8 billion industry to a $9 billion industry, roughly. You could argue the numbers. But that hasn't even outgrown GDP or media inflation. And so when I look at that, I'm like, why? And so I thought when we talked about being at this forum, let's pose that question and ask ourselves why? It seems like it should be doing better.
Yeah, so let's poke into it a little bit, and maybe we can find our way a little bit closer to the truth. So what do you think might be some of the things driving that? Is it an issue of reluctance, where the brands or the agencies that are planning overall media spend don't quite know what they have in hand? They're not sure how to effectively realize the full potential. Maybe their MMMs or their MTA models are suggesting that investment should go somewhere else. What do you think some of those drivers are?
You know, if I grab a little altitude on that, one thing I notice is that there's this tendency to get super hyper-tactical very, very quickly. And I think along the way, we've lost some of the broad scope and power of out-of-home overall. And maybe one way to think of it is realize the whole playing field. If you look at out-of-home, this is digital out-of-home, this is programmatic digital out-of-home. Still 80% of it is printed. And it all works together super powerfully. That's all the arrows in your quiver, not just the one arrow. And I think at times we lose some of that, and it becomes a little too narrow. But the other thing I want to point out is that I want to make it clear. I really believe that in retrospect, we're going to see the digital out-of-home revolution is going to have the same or bigger impact socially, economically, spiritually, in every way, as much or more so than the TV revolution of the 50s. Think about it. Atmosphere was talking about it this morning. If you want to reach everybody now, the digital out-of-home collective channel is the way to do it. Because, I mean, think, what the #1 cable news show, how many people watch that a day? 1% of the US population, maybe. But what we can, I mean, Atmosphere itself reaches 150, 170 million people in a month. And you add up all the other networks and put them together, it's reaching most of the US population, which is what it was like when TV first came on the scene, right? You could reach half of America every day. It was like the Super Bowl every day. So I think that power somehow hasn't yet been realized. That's when I speak to the Ferrari in a parking lot. It's like, when the war broke out in Ukraine, I don't know if you recall, but all of a sudden, all over digital out of home, all over the globe, were these boards that were blue and yellow. And it was something, something referencing the war in Ukraine, supporting Ukraine. And that happened organically, without a plan, without a budget. And it was all over the world. And I say to myself, why hasn't a brand done that? It's just sitting there waiting. So that's what's idling in the parking lot.
So as we talk about this shift from traditional out-of-home and some of like the older formats into the current evolution, I love how you kind of broke down like the piece by piece of what that inventory looks like. Have we left something behind? Are there some fundamentals of out-of-home that as we move into the digital era, as we embrace the digital format and all of this new unlocked supply, are planners and brands today leveraging the wins and the successes of what out-of-home originally was in their modern adaptations?
Yes and no. I think they're leveraging new things you can do with digital. Speed, flexibility, context, all of those. Shorter planning times, copy changes, saving money on production. You don't have to worry about the install because it's too windy today to put up a vinyl. All those type of things. I mean, those are the wins. But if you back up a little bit, some things are lost. For example, not all impressions are equal. And inevitably, when you look at buying digital out of home or buying it programmatically, it gets blunted down to these reports of impressions and CPMs, and it's assuming they're all equal. And they're not even close. And that's a problem. The other thing I see is we'll talk to brands all the time. We're like, yeah, we're doing out of home. We've got our digitally native buyer flipping the out of home switch on Trade Desk. We're investing in out of home. Like, no, that's out of home. That's digital. This is what you're doing. And you're not giving yourself a chance to even explore what the whole out of home landscape can do. There's other challenges, which is that inventory disbursement by market varies. A digital bus shelter is a very different experience in New York than it is in LA. So you can't treat them the same. Disbursement of inventory around the market from the north part of town to the south part of town is different. So you really need buyers that have deep tribal knowledge, format by market segment, and how they work together. Another example is that in Los Angeles, you want to reach everybody? Big bulletins on the freeways and main streets. That's how you're going to really blanket that city. New York, street level kiosks. Two different cities, two different formats that work in literally similar ways, just depending on where they're at and what they are. So those are some of the fundamentals that I think that have gone away. And anecdotal, no, wrong word. Just what I hear from the general managers of some of the billboard companies sort of proves this out. They'll say, hey, we love seeing the incoming from programmatic channels on our digital boards. Found money. Just happens. We didn't have to go chase it. We didn't have to sell it. I see it on the sales report. Yay, woo. But it doesn't stick. It's very churny. The attrition is super high. And that's because I think the brand is not having that true full out-of-home experience. They're just getting this. The other part is that if the brand's just getting this piece, so is the public. And quite often what I see and hear is way too much conversation about the things we're concerned about. The audience targeting and segmenting the CPMs and so on and so forth. And nowhere in there do I hear a conversation about the public. Because they're not waking up in the morning to randomly consume irrelevant out-of-home media. We have to bring it to them in a way that makes it relevant and enough of it so it's abundant so we can reach critical frequency and they can remember it. And I think they get lost in that discussion.
Yeah, I love this. If you could really ground it and say, I don't know, 3 fundamentals that digital and programmatic buyers need to wrap their head around to really draw this through and to really connect those dots between what you're talking about with out of home as some of those classic consider the location, consider the placement, consider the type of impression that it is. What are those like core fundamentals that they really need to go back to when they're then going into Trade Desk or wherever and placing their programmatic buy?
Sure. I'm going to speak a couple broad concepts and then maybe get more specific. But I think broadly, we all have to start with the first idea, which is it's not about us. It's about the public. And that's where we really, really need to start. And I think we skip past that sometimes. The other part is that if you look at what makes for successful out-of-home campaigns, the ones that you admire and look at and see over and over again, the behavior of that brand is more of that of an investor and citizen in the space versus being a tourist and a consumer. Look at Apple, for example. $200 million a year in out-of-home in the US, some of the best real estate. It's taken them 20 years to get all that inventory. They stayed with it. They had a vision, they stuck with it, and they've created these landmarks of public sculpture for the world to view. Now that's an extreme example, and not everybody has that budget or anything anywhere near it. However, their mindset is about the public, it's about being an investor and citizen of the space. And I think that can happen regardless of your budget size. Now once you're in there, understand I think some fundamentals are, understand the full spectrum of the inventory footprint. That if you're in the programmatic piece, you're getting this is the digital piece, this is all of it. Understand how they all work together and consider that. Consider disbursement of inventory throughout a market. It's not an even blanket of screens or frames. It's uneven. It's more concentrated in other places, less so, depending on where you're looking at within the market. Consider how they all work together. Also that from market to market, they behave differently. It really requires that level of like deep local tribal knowledge to be able to make it work and put all the pieces together well.
Mm. So let's talk about what's going right. So you gave some examples at the start around how with new digital capabilities, there's better accuracy and speed to market.
I have my notes on what's going right.
You really had to write them down. Talk to me about...
There's a lot of things going right.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be a naysayer, but I do think it's healthy to challenge ourselves. And that's why I wanted to talk about this today.
Absolutely. So break it down for us. What do you see as the huge pluses to digital and the capabilities that have really unlocked and emerged?
Well, look, there's the obvious ones: speed, flexibility, immediacy in the marketplace, being able to respond to something happening in the world around you, turning it on and off, all of those things, shortened production timelines, message flexibility, the if-then scenarios with digital messaging. All of that has gone really well. And I think we've learned how to do that fairly well. The creative possibilities, I think we're starting to accept and understand that we're just scratching the surface there. The anamorphic, we're starting to become students of it. We're starting to understand that there's so much more we could do creatively. We don't even know what we don't know. I look at the art world as a place that's going to inform what we do creatively. If you look at some of the digital artwork from like Rafik Anadol and others like that, art always informs what happens commercially at some point. And I think that part, the creative part, is emerging. And I think it's healthy that we're realizing we could do much better creatively. The measurement piece as well, we're trying to figure that out. But that, I'm not sure we're measuring the right stuff. And I know we're going to talk about that in a minute, so I'll hold off on that. But those are the things that are going well. Mm. And I would say digital out-of-home, and in particular programmatic digital out-of-home, it's kind of a gateway drug for certain brands to find their way into out-of-home. It's an easy thing to do. It's like, that makes sense to me. I'm familiar with it. I've spent all my time in search and social. I can just add this in. Bang, let's go. I can flip the switch on Trade Desk and be there. So it is attracting new money into the industry in a way that other innovations haven't.
Yeah, so I think where I want to end our conversation, and then after this we'll pick up with a panel that you're on to talk about the measurement piece like you alluded to, is I guess with your history and your knowledge of the space, and as you look at digital, if a brand hasn't invested in this space before, if they're looking to break into out-of-home for the first time, or if they're looking to double up into their digital programmatic investment in this space, how would you guide them? What advice would you give them, especially as they're looking at their 2026 plans?
Sure. and this sounds like a pitch for out-of-home specialist agencies, and I'm telling you it's not. But I think the first thing I would advise them to do is get expert help, right? I mean, really get some clear advice. You don't go to court without an attorney, at least you shouldn't. And you shouldn't go dive into out-of-home without somebody on your team or somebody at your agency or a specialist agency or somebody in there who can really help you look at all of it. And don't start with just, hey, I want to buy digital out-of-home. Start with, I want to look at out-of-home overall. And chop the wood. Go through the process. What markets make sense to me? Where does my audience live and move around those markets? What are the points of interest in those markets that might hit people when they're in the right mindset? Where is all the inventory? And then what makes sense? Whether it's a street decal or a big giant digital screen or atmosphere TV or whatever it might be. Go through the steps. I think starting out by saying, yeah, we want to buy some programmatic out of, maybe you do, maybe you don't. Start at the top.
Love it. Well, thank you, Rick. All right, we're going to turn it over to the crowd now for the questions that you have.
I've never seen 70 dead people sitting upright. I'm just kidding.
Spencer Getnell, Broadsign. I spent time on the publisher side for years and out of home, and now full-time programmatic. I really like you said it as a gateway drug, because I think it can be used to get them hooked and then spread. But I think to the GM's point, it could also be almost like an easy checked box to say you did it. Are there any like best practices you've seen to be able to push them towards the gateway drug if you feel they're checking a box? Or I'm curious how those two kind of play against each other.
I don't know. I think the best practice is to just go in palms up, no assumptions, and start there. And even start with the question, does out-of-home even solve their problem? I mean, you really have to be that objective if you want to stay out of the box checking spot. And when we have brands that come to us constantly, say, hey, we want to do some programmatic digital out-of-home, woo! And then we look at it, and that's not really what they wanted. Maybe they just wanted digital. Maybe they just wanted a big wall on Sunset Strip. Maybe they just wanted to be able to say they had out-of-home in their mix. I mean, it's getting underneath those parts.
Okay, over here.
There you go.
Tell us who you are, please.
Mary with Vengo.
Hey, Mary.
So the way you broke down all of out-of-home inventory, traditional digital out-of-home, programmatic digital out-of-home, there's so much overlap in there. There are digital billboards that are available programmatically.
Sure.
Do you see any opportunities for programmatic to help certain types of inventory? Not all digital out-of-home is, giant billboards and urban
Sure.
panels, so.
Look, I think it should all be connected. One of the best things that we've done in the last several years is get the pipes more figured out than they have been. I think from the beginning we said, oh, the pipes are all great, you can access anything, anytime, anyhow, and we all know that that's not what it was. But we've certainly made a lot of progress. So in my view, any digital screen out there should be connected, absolutely. Certainly, programmatic has been very, very helpful for the play space as a starting point. And I think that's helped fund the continued investment in play space. I'm exceptionally interested to see what happens on the retail networks because I think that's bringing new money into play space. How that's going to play out, I don't know. I don't know if that's just switching money from advertising dollars to merchandising dollars or vice versa. But I think all screens should be connected. And I don't know if there's any one type that benefits more than another.
Thank you.
Cool. All right, Rick. Well, thank you. Appreciate
You're
the
welcome.
insights. I don't know if we fully solved the question of your Ferrari, but I think maybe we got a little bit further, just a little bit. We at least got the keys in the ignition.